Welcome back to We the Union. This is episode 8, and I am your host, Daisha Benjamin. Thank you for joining me today. We'll start off with some good news. I don't know if this is new news for some of you, but a few months ago, AFSCME has made their bachelor's degree program permanent. So if you are looking to go to school and pursue higher education, AFSCME offers free college, and now it is a permanent benefit. So if you're interested in that, please look into it, and it is an amazing opportunity. We also offer a lot of different member benefits. So if you haven't heard about those, or if you need to learn more information about that, please visit our website. That's AFSCME36.org. That's AFSCME36.org. Click on the resources tab and then click on the member benefits button, and you'll have a lot of information there about all of the discounts that you get as a union member and opportunities that you get as a union member. So please look into that. I also want to say happy AAPI Heritage Month. That's Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders Heritage Month. We should have an episode coming out about that next time, so stay tuned for that. It is also Mental Health Awareness Month, and that is what this episode is about. So make sure you stay tuned for the interview. Let's go. So it is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so I'm joined today by someone who I think can speak very well on mental health and mental health awareness. So let's start. Can you go ahead and just introduce yourself?
My name is Jordan Vicks, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker, PSW2, and I work at the Wellness Center in the Antelope Valley for the Department of Mental Health. I have been there for almost 10 years, and I've been a social worker for 20 years, and a licensed clinician for more than 10 years, working in mental health since I was 25. So, and policy and advocacy for even longer. So for quite a long time.
So we can say that you are somewhat of an expert, right? Like you know what you're talking about when you talk about mental health, right?
Yeah, as much as anyone can. I'm very familiar with mental health, and I've actually done a lot of different things in mental health, psychotherapy groups, as well as social work, and also medical social work, emergency social work. I've worked in IMDs, been in boarding cares. I've been in small nonprofits. I've done the advocacy and policy work. I've worked with homeless. I've done drop-in centers, group homes. I've worked with adolescents, kids, older adults. So I've had and I've worked in jails as well. So I've had the luxury of, as some social workers have, of really being able to be in a variety of different environments. And really all of them have been mental health oriented, perhaps except, but it still is mental health. But the policy and advocacy work, a lot of that was homelessness, but that there's so much overlapping issues between, as you know, like with deinstitutionalization in the 80s, and the increased homeless population, in the Reagan years. So there's just too much overlap to say it's not a homeless issue. Right. It's not a mental health issue, rather.
Right. So why is Mental Health Awareness Month important, and what does it mean to you?
Well, first of all, I think every day is Mental Health Awareness Day, and that's kind of a no-brainer, and you may have even expected me just to say that right off the bat. But but one of the things that is important in terms of having a specific month is that it's a time for reflection, as well as a spotlight, like a highlight, for the public to begin to look at mental health, in a way, and education, because the public has such a strong influence on mental health, whether it be economically, whether it be stigmatically. And when the public has that type of impact, we have the opportunity to change some of the very negative, thoughts, that the public may have, or just the erroneous information that's out there, in Hollywood, or just what people think, like the things that you hear, that people that have mental illness are all violent, or I'm having a bipolar moment,
Right.
and as well as no one ever gets better, and what does better mean, or if you didn't become mentally ill in your 20s, you're oh wait, you're lucky, you're never going to become mentally ill.
Right.
So we have that opportunity during May to really make a positive impact, um, um, in America and worldwide as well, to help bring the spotlight on mental health, and do a lot of activism around that, so that the public can begin to see mental health in a realistic light, and hopefully also begin to put more funding into mental health, because the cost alone of mental health, and if you can imagine all of the untreated mental health because of stigma, is enormous. And then when you look at developing countries versus other countries that are underdeveloped, it's even harder to imagine. I was in the Peace Corps in my early 20s in Africa, and mental health, I don't want to say it doesn't exist, but mental health treatment, is a luxury. It's something that only people in a certain echelon would receive. And I was in the boonies and the sticks, in a village up country, and if you had a mental health issue, you were an untouchable. And you were on the streets, and you were going to die on the streets. Period. End of the story.
Right. And I think one thing that hopefully Mental Health Awareness Month can bring awareness to is that, there aren't just three mental health issues, right? People always think, oh, bipolar, schizophrenic, and then that's it, right? Everything else is
Yeah.
you just need to, I don't know, think about it, or you just need to talk to your friends about it or whatever. And that's just the end of it. And so
Yeah.
hopefully we can sort of, bring awareness to the fact that there are mental illnesses of a variety of them that affect people in different ways. And it can be
Absolutely.
anything, right? It can be anything just from anxiety to schizophrenia. It's not just, on the
It,
extreme end.
Yes, and also, working in the Antelope Valley, especially, we see a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder, and I don't know exactly why, and it'd be very interesting to do a study on that. But it we see a great deal of substance abuse and poverty as well. Um, and I also I'm of the mind that substance abuse as well is a mental health issue, and I know that luckily we've made a lot of changes to that, and it used to be you can't treat somebody until they're clean and sober for such and such time, but how many people with mental health issues have also co-occurring disorders with substance abuse? It's they say 50-60%. Who knows what the exact statistic is, but it's alarmingly high. And so if we do that, we do a huge disservice to people that are really suffering, and especially with PTSD and all of the misconceptions, again, out there in the public with only vets,
Right.
and of course vets, yeah, I'm not saying no, but survivors of rape, survivors of suicide, survivors of a car accident, and it may be also an acute episode, but it also may turn into a longer term PTSD issue without treatment. And that affects the workplace. And there's not a lot of talk about how people with untreated mental health issues are affected in the workplace and how that affects the economy.
Mhm.
And there needs to be more talk of that. And I think Mental Health Month is an opportunity to talk about stigma and how stigma and stigma is really from the Greek word or even the Christian word of the crucifixion, and the Greek word of being marked, being branded, being one of the undesirables, and it's a huge thing for somebody to come out and say, I have a mental illness. And so somebody that's working, they don't want to lose their job. They don't want to necessarily come out of the closet, so to speak. And then they may lose their job because they actually have an episode on the job, and people might think that they're just, whoa, what's going on here?
Right.
And so the economic cost to that is alarming when someone doesn't get treatment to families. And mental health, like substance abuse, is also a family disease, if you ask me.
So now that we're, I want to say the tail end of a pandemic, but
Yeah.
What can we expect to see as far as mental health goes? Like, did the pandemic bring more attention to mental health, or are we going to see like a rise in mental health issues because of the pandemic?
I think that the pandemic really exposed a lot of people to having mental health issues that didn't realize that it was even possible for them to have mental health issues. And it also validated a lot of people with mental health issues, who were told, for years and years and years, get over it, take vitamins, blah, blah, blah. And clients that, I provide therapy to and have for years and years, have come to me and said, so my family member finally gets it. They have a taste of what it's like to be isolated and experience some depression and anxiety. And they're coming to me and saying, "Oh my goodness, wow, I can't believe what you go through, because now I feel like." I'm stuck inside. I feel like a shut in. I feel down. My normal routine is disrupted. I can't see my friends, blah, blah, blah. And I'm feeling sad. I feel hopeless. I feel scared. And with all of the telehealth, more and more people have gravitated toward talking to a therapist. And I even did some research, and it's like a booming industry, and it's even hard to get into, to find one. I mean, there are so many people, and I get so many calls to say, will you do this? Well, I have a full-time job, so I really can't. But and these are people that don't have necessarily a chronic mental illness, but they are struggling with adjustment disorders, with a depressive phase, and it's mostly adjustment, but or a brief, anxiety disorder of some sort. So it's put, again, like I said before, the spotlight on mental health, the pandemic. And it does make me wonder with like something like the Spanish flu, what was going on then with mental health, you know?
Right. Yeah, and they
So
had even
yes,
less access back then to like
yeah,
that.
and what it reminds me of actually is of the industrial age when Durkheim, if you remember from forever ago in college, and he was studying suicide, and the suicide rates were just skyrocketing when the nuclear family uh, was beginning to break down from the extended family, and people were isolated, and suicide rates literally were skyrocketing. And he began to see that anomie, you know, the feeling of aimlessness, the feeling of not being attached to a group, had this huge effect on individuals, and suicide rates were going up and up and up. And I'm not saying all of these people had mental health issues, but I can tell you that suicide rates, I believe, have gone up, you
Yeah.
know, and I know in, you know, my arena, it's true. You know, I have seen this with suicide, you
Yeah.
know.
So, in your opinion, in your expertise, um, how can we develop healthy mental health habits to help us cope, especially during a pandemic, to just kind of help us, with our own mental health, even if it's just something that's minor? What are some things that we can do?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. And I think that one of the most important things is having structure, and keeping a structure, and that includes just a regular sleep cycle, a regular eating cycle, and having also something that you enjoy doing, you know, whether it's puzzles or art or, you know, reading the newspaper, and limiting some of the social media and some of the news, you know, because it's overwhelming, and also reaching out to friends and family, and that structure I do think helps with mental health, but having also awareness of what's going on and educating yourself, and talking to your doctor, your physician, and more physicians now are, you know, using the PHQ-9, and they are screening, but they're not necessarily following up. So I think that if mental health, you know, can begin to pair more with physicians, and do more outreach, you know, with people, in the future, then we're going to be able to help more people do that. The other thing that I find very helpful, for me, I mean, one is art, obviously, but the other, is animals. And this is for the elderly too, whether it's pet therapy if they can't, actually own a pet, or it's equine therapy, which is something that I really love. And I have horses myself, and I've had clients that have gotten involved in equine therapy, and I've seen incredible success, you know, in their ability to manage, you know, negative self-talk and even suicidal ideation. So I do think animals are extremely helpful, as well as just distraction. You know, while you have that schedule, you also have time for relaxation, time for fun. Because a lot of people end up just staying in their pajamas and, you know, not bathing for a week. And that's when, you know, I come in and say, you know, that's just going to lead you down that path. You know, that's a recipe for depression.
Right.
You know, for me, for, you know, for you, you know, I mean, I don't mean you, but
Yeah.
I mean, it just really is. It becomes, just a cycle. So, we have to keep up, you know, with, you know, whether it's gardening or whether it's cleaning the house, but or waking up and always doing your dishes, but that really helps. And that is, in my opinion, like the job for the person, you know, if they don't have a job or something like that, like think of it as this is your job, you know, this is your mental health treatment.
Right. And so you mentioned your artwork. So can you talk a little bit about your artwork and how it's connected to your mental health or just mental health in general?
Well, art, I mean, as you know, has been seen and even studied as kind of like the creative outlet for people that have mental health issues. Van Gogh and other artists. But at the same time, I've been a creative artist type person, since I was a child. But I have moved in a different direction artistically, and I do more. I do have some art in the background. This is my art studio. Um, and I lost my brother to suicide in 2016, and he did have bipolar disorder. And I started doing art like in a frenzy, way more art than I'd ever done before. And that was a coping method for me, really, to try to understand the loss, immense loss. My only sibling, like Irish twins, just a year and a half apart, and to do something that would allow me the freedom to express my grief and express myself in an abstract way, but also in a way that helped me make sense of something that I was angry about, I was overwhelmed with, I couldn't understand, as well as, over the years, I have done art therapy, and I found it to be incredibly soothing, as well as just a poignant way of sharing with the world, um, even mental health issues. I mean, and in like my Instagram or in any art galleries or shows that I've been in, I do talk about mental health and social justice being my muse, and and that's where I'm coming from. That is something that's extremely important to me. And since it's abstract, it may not come out that way, but for me, that's what it's about. It's about mental health and mental illness specifically, and a lot of it did come from my brother. Even though I was an artist before, I've never painted this much, so. And I also was private about my art before. And after my brother died, I felt like, art is not mine. Art is for everybody. Art is to be shared. And that's when I, began to, have my art be in, books or magazines or out there in Instagram, and realize that one of the most important things for art is to also share, with an audience, some of the intimate, feelings that you may have. They may see it differently, but also, in a title or in like an Instagram discussion, talk about, how this painting came about, what I was struggling with. And through that communication, as an artist, I'm able to talk about personal issues, loss, and really try to connect with my audience, and that for me is helpful. And after a day of talking to people, because therapy is a very lonely occupation. I don't necessarily want to. I usually don't. I don't want to go out. I don't want to talk to people. I would rather go and play with my horse or paint. And that for me is soothing. But I would also like to share it with other people. And artists tend to have, and not all artists, because not all artists are like me, but there are quite a few artists that also do struggle, are survivors of suicide, are people that struggle with mental health issues, and then there's that space that you can share with other people.
Right. And I'm glad you found that outlet, because not a lot of people do find an outlet, and that's, kind of how things kind of fester, and people can tend to struggle a lot more. So I'm glad you found an outlet, and hopefully other people um, can find that, right? Whether it is through pets or horses or art or dance or reading or writing, whatever it is, hopefully they can find that outlet to let anything that they're going through kind of out, and hopefully it can help them out. So yeah, that's
Absolutely.
amazing story, and I love your artwork. It's beautiful. I know people can't see it, but I can see it, and it's
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
you're welcome. So you mentioned earlier you were talking about mental health and the workplace, and so I do know that you are interested in becoming a shop steward. Is it connected to that at all, or is it just connected to kind of like your activism that you do outside of work?
Both. One, for a long time, people in, in in the clinic and the wellness center actually just thought I was the steward, and I was just mistaken for being the steward, and I realized, because I was asked to like update the board, like and I know, tell I'm an outspoken person as well, about rights, and employee rights. But what I've noticed is that there is a huge lack of education and understanding of rights, and a fear, and, and and that is just such a striking, thing in the workplace, in the DMH, where we're talking about just culture and, that type of thing, and I just feel like, this is just not right. And I'm out in the Antelope Valley, where it's like cowboys and Indians, and there's no, for me, it feels like there's no oversight, and they're just making policies up and doing whatever they want, and I've had to fight so many battles like on my own, and then I think about when people call me up and they're in tears and they're saying, "What do I do?" Thinking I'm the steward, but I'm not. And I refer them to the right people, but at the same time, it's like this is one, a free rider syndrome, where people aren't like paying dues, for example, but then when something comes up, they want help,
Right.
because of the fear of management and wanting to kind of buddy up to that. And then when something goes awry, they're like, I need help. So with education, as well as with trying to mobilize people, because I feel like our union has not had the strength that it could have, and I feel like that's something that I have wanted to do for, a long time, but I've had a lot of setbacks in my personal life, and it's just become more and more apparent that if we're not able to mobilize, and we just have a handful of people, that are working their rear ends off, we're not going to be able to ever, have a voice. It's just going to be like, like Teddy and, you and some other people just like, trying to do this, with nobody behind them, except for when they have their one grievance, and a union is not just about grievances, and it seems like that's what people think. And there's a lack there of education, and the people I talk to, they've never even heard of Weingarten rights, and they don't even really understand their rights, and they don't understand anything, and management too, really wants it that way. They like it that way,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yep.
and they like to push that, productivity, this, that, and the other, and that's just one of the like minor things, but it's like a fear-based toxicity that I've seen for a long, long time. And fill out this form, and I'm going to do this, um, and someone's just shaking in their boots, not realizing that they do have the right, if they're being disciplined, to request some representation. And I can't tell you the amount of times I've been literally, I mean, I don't know if I should say this here, but I've been literally told like things that are not true.
Yep.
And then I think, well, if they're telling me that, and they know I'm a loudmouth, what the heck are they telling other people?
Right. Yep.
So that's really the reason. And nobody wants to come out to the Antelope Valley, but I work in the Antelope Valley. So who better to do that? I mean, it's a long drive,
Yeah.
so I think that, if there is something unfair going on, and if there are people that understand their rights more and more, that we would have more opportunities to not have an adversarial relationship, but to have better relationships with better understandings of the memorandum of understanding, and to sit at the table and really talk about what it is we can do, rather than the fear-based. So that's really the reason why, and I've thought about it for years, but only recently did I say, I think this is a time in my life that I would be able to do this.
Yeah. Well, good for you. Good for you. And hopefully other people will step up and want to get more involved, because, what makes the union strong is participation and member involvement, member engagement. So hopefully more people will, join in and become involved. So that's awesome. My last question to you is, how can we bring more awareness to mental health, right? This is Mental Health Awareness Month. How can we do it? How can we bring more awareness to it?
Well, I mean, I address this in part, but the other piece I think is not by acting and operating in a silo. And I sometimes don't even realize that I'm doing that. And because mental health is such a huge part of my life. And I don't even realize that I'm sitting with people at the dinner table, or family, and it's like that's all I have to talk about, and they don't even know what I'm talking about, and then I realized that I need to take a step back and incorporate it into other areas so that it becomes more mainstream. One thing that I think brings more awareness is realizing that the knee bone is connected to the leg bone, is connected to and what I mean by that is something that clients have shared with me over the years. Things like, why didn't I learn this in grade school? Why didn't I learn to self-regulate?
Right.
Why didn't I get these, self-soothing skills, as a teenager? And so it's striking that, we're getting PE and art, and they're even talking sometimes about shutting that down. But why the heck aren't we having mental health in the classroom, to more of a degree? Why aren't we having people like me, going into the classrooms? Why doesn't DMH do more of that? And if they are doing that and I just don't know about it, I think that we should be doing it regularly. We should, we should be advocating for, a position for that. And we should be doing panels, and I can't tell you how many times I've asked, especially at a wellness center, which is being run like a clinic, but uh, um, you know, for a client-centered approach, because if when I was a teenager, if I had that knowledge, that more of an understanding of mental health, self-soothing, just like my clients tell me, boy, would my life probably be a lot different, and that I think would be a major piece of reducing stigma surrounding mental health, is making it part of the curriculum in early education. And that is talking about prevention, early intervention. Just the way, when you go to the jails and, you talk to an 11-year-old, you have the opportunity to help them have a better life. But if you're talking to an 18-year-old, that's been in, the gangs, and he's got, 18th Street tattooed on his head, on his forehead, it's a lot harder for them. A retirement is not really, it's very hard to retire from the gangs.
Right.
So I think education is one of the really the beginning steps. That's an obvious step that the clients actually have just been telling me for the last decade, and if they're telling me that, then I know it's true. And I thought that too. And then they're telling me that, and they're angry about it. They feel like I lost something.
Right.
And also, truthfully, I was talking to a girlfriend, and she lived in France for 20 years. They have a totally different healthcare system. If you ask for mental health, it's not even something you ask for. You just have mental health. It's enrolled in. You don't separate, and that's what I mean by the leg bone attached to
right.
Yep. I mean, it's all connected. Spirituality, mental health, physical health. These things you can't tear apart and see in vacuums. And we have a bad habit of doing that, whether it comes to our bodies, or whether it comes to, medical health and mental health, and we really need to address that, because, with mental health, if you're not caring for your mental health, I can guarantee you it's going to be very difficult for you to take care of your medical health.
Right. Yep.
So address it early on, with kids, educate parents. It doesn't mean you're crazy, if you're having, thoughts that are different than others, or if you're exhibiting signs. I've hospitalized 5-year-olds. It's hard. It's very challenging, but that I don't think is the way to learn about mental health.
Right.
So I think that's really part of it. I think there's a lot more to it, but that has to do with the public, because the public opinion is powerful, and it has, if it is able to have a positive impact and increase awareness, allowing people to get help that currently aren't receiving it due to stigma, then we're going to be able to address a lot of these issues. So, as well as if health insurance, isn't demanding that doctors get rich, and that's another thing that Europe doesn't do. Doctors make house calls. Being a doctor doesn't mean driving a Mercedes Benz.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So hopefully we can start to see those things happening, because I agree. I mean, bringing it up early and helping kids, give them those tools early on in life can definitely make a huge difference in their life. So hopefully we can start to see some movement there, and hopefully it can happen through discussions like this or through panels or whatever. We can start to see those changes happen. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. But yeah, I just want to say thank you for coming on and talking to me about this. It's a super important topic, and hopefully we can bring awareness to it just through this episode alone. So thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. If you want to say your Instagram handle so people can check out your artwork, if you want to put that out there really quickly.
it's Instagram, and then it's just it's kind of hard because it's J Dunyasha 23.
Oh.
So I don't know how easy that is.
I'll put it in the description box, and I'll put it on the post. When I put it on social media, I'll tag you so that people
Okay,
can have it.
that would
Yeah.
be great. Yeah, yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, and
I
I have a
appreciate it.
website too.
Oh,
So
okay. Okay, I'll put
okay.
that on there too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today on We the Union, episode 8. I want to say thank you once again to my guest, Jordan Vicks. And if you are interested in her artwork and seeing her artwork, make sure to check the description box for her link, her and for her website. So make sure you check that out. I also want to say that if you guys have any question for us, whether it's about the labor movement, whether it's about unions, whether it's about the episode you just heard, or any episodes that you want to see in the future, make sure to reach out to me at daisha@afscme36.org. That's DAISHA@afscme36.org. You can email those questions to me and we will answer them on the show. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys next time.